Hello, my name is Pastor Kris Kollar. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm State Park and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. The last time I tried to do this recording, I did an entire chapter before I realized that it was not recording. So we are going to try it again, and it does look like it is working this time. We are reading through the Bible with commentary. We are in the book of 1 Kings. Like Samuel, Kings was written originally as one book in Hebrew, but when they translated it into Greek, it became two books and two scrolls. It took two scrolls to write it because the Hebrew, when they wrote it in Hebrew, has no vowels and no spaces, and it's just this big string of Hebrew letters. Greek isn't much better. There's still not much spaces, but it takes more space to write the Greek than it took to write the Hebrew. So we are up to King Solomon, and as we heard in the last session that actually was recorded, King Solomon built a temple for the Lord of Israel, the God of Israel, and it was built with dressed stones and wood, but completely covered with gold on the inside. In today's session, we're going to hear about the palace or house that Solomon builds for himself, and then kind of abruptly it switches back over to the temple and some descriptions of some of the things that were made for the temple. One of the things about the Jewish temple that was original, the first one was built by Solomon. It was absolutely splendid, amazing, fabulous ancient wonder of the ancient world. Then it was utterly destroyed and rebuilt after the Jewish people returned from captivity. We will have not got to that yet. When we get to that, that'll be the second temple. And then we think of it as the third temple, but it really was only ever the second temple. During Roman times, Herod the Great built up the mountain that the temple is built on and built a new temple, but he built it around the existing second temple so that it's still the second temple, but sometimes referred to as Herod's temple. But the second temple was never destroyed until the Herod's temple was destroyed not very long after it was built. In 70 AD, the Romans came and sieged Jerusalem, sacked the temple, took everything back. And part of how we know what everything looked like is there's a pillar in Rome where they carved that we have destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, we have defeated the Israeli God. So there were technically three temples. No, there were technically two temples. This first temple, Solomon's temple, and then the later temple, which then Herod built a third 2.5 temple around the second temple. But today we're hearing about Solomon's palace first, and then a little bit more about the temple. So chapter 7. Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished his entire house. He built the house of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, built on 4 rows of cedar pillars with cedar beams on the pillars. So the house is called the house of the forest of Lebanon because it has so many pillars, so many trees, that it looks like you are in the forest when you go to this house. As we said before, a cubit is about 18 inches, so the length of a man's forearm. So when you hear a measure such as 100 cubits, you take it 1.5, and that's how many feet. So 150 feet, 75 cubits wide, and it's 45 feet high. So not small. Built, and then see, verse 3, it was roofed with cedar on the 45 rafters, 15 in each row, which were on the pillars. There were wooden window frames in the 3 rows facing each other in the 3 rows. All of the doorways and doorposts had 4-sided frames opposite, facing each other in 3 rows. He made the hall of pillars 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide. So it'd be like 75 feet long, so not small, and 45 wide. There was a porch in front with pillars and a canopy in front of them. He made the hall of the throne where he was to pronounce judgment, the hall of justice, covered with cedar from floor to floor. His own house where he would reside in the other court back of the hall was of the same construction. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken in marriage. And as we've mentioned, to take Pharaoh's daughter in marriage is a political agreement. It is not just, oh, I'm in love with your daughter. It's I will not attack you and you will not attack me because you are my father-in-law. I am your son-in-law. So political alliance by marrying Pharaoh's daughter, and to treat her with proper respect and give her her own hall and her own house. Later we will hear that Solomon has many, many wives and concubines, many of whom would have been political alliance people, but not all of them. So there's a lot of houses for Solomon's house. Verse 9, all these were made of costly stones, cut according to measure, sawed with saws, back and front, from the foundation to the coping, and from outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, huge stones, stones of 8 and 10 cubits, so 15 feet long. There were costly stones above, cut to measure, and cedar wood. The great court had 3 courses of dressed stone to 1 layer, and cedar beams all around. So had the inner court of the house of the Lord, and the vestibule of the house. Then kind of all of a sudden we're now talking about the house of the Lord, and there isn't really a very clear transition. So when I actually read this chapter before thinking I was making a recording, it took me a minute to realize, oh, we're on the temple now. So I'm telling you, we are on the temple now. And we're going to hear about all the bronze made for the temple. Verse 13. Now King Solomon invited and received Hiram from Tyre. He was the son of a widow of the tribe of Naphtali, whose father, a man of Tyre, had been an artisan in bronze. He was full of skill, intelligence, and knowledge in working bronze. He came to King Solomon and did all his work. So we have this bronze person who's able to work in bronze. He's originally from Tyre, but his mother is Jewish. Verse 15, he cast 2 pillars of bronze. 18 cubits was the height of the one, and a cord of 12 cubits would encircle it. So 15 feet all the way around this pillar. There's 2 pillars in front of the temple, and we're going to hear about the pillars, and then the part on the top of the pillar is called a capital, which has a bowl and lattice work and pomegranates and all kinds of fancy trim. Here we go. 18 cubits was the height of the one. A cord of 12 cubits would encircle it. The second pillar was the same. He also made 2 capitals of molten bronze to set on tops of the pillars. The height of the one capital was 5 cubits. The height of the other capital was 5 cubits. There were nets of checker work with wreaths of chain work for the capitals on the tops of the pillars, 7 for the one capital and 7 for the other capital. He made the columns with 2 rows around each lattice work to cover the capitals that were above the pomegranates. He did the same with the other capital. Now the capitals that were on the tops of the pillars in the vestibule were of lily work, 4 cubits high. The capitals were on 2 pillars and also above the rounded projection that was beside the latticework. There were 200 pomegranates in rows all around, and so with the other capital. He set up the pillars at the vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the south and called it Jachin, which we have, the footnote says that this is the Lord, he the Lord establishes. He set up the pillar on the north and called it Boaz, which is in him the Lord is strength. So in front of the temple, beautiful, completely covered with gold on the inside temple are these 2 massive pillars, 18 cubits, so they're like, I'm going to do my math wrong, 27 feet high, so like a 3-story building. And then on top there's capital and pomegranates and lattice work and chains, and there's lilies, and it's big and it's fancy, and it's completely made out of bronze. Verse 23. Well, before that, verse 22, on the tops of the pillars was lily work. Thus the work of the pillars was finished. Verse 23. Then he made the molten sea. The sea, he made literally a humongous little bathtub, small swimming pool, a huge thing to hold water that is there at the temple, and it's very large, and it holds a lot of water for the priests to use in their duties and in cleaning. He made a molten sea. It was round, 10 cubits from brim to brim, so 15 feet across, and 5 cubits high, so about 7.5 feet tall. A line of 30 cubits would encircle it completely. So it took 45 feet to go all the way around this bronze swimming pool. For lack of a better word of it, the sea. It stood, I think I missed something here, encircle complete. Verse 24, under its brim were panels all around it, each of 10 cubits surrounding the sea. There were 2 rows of panels cast when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. And the sea was set on them. So you have a 7.5 foot tall, 15 feet across basin of water that is sitting on top of bronze oxen. So it's very large, very big. It holds a lot of water. The hindquarters of each oxen were toward the inside. Its thickness was a handbreadth. Its brim was made like the brim of a cup, like the flower of a lily. It held 2,000 baths. I'm not sure exactly how much a bath, but basically a lot of water. Verse 27, he also made 10 stands of bronze. All right, so before I even read the description, I'm just going to describe it, that you have kind of like little rolling carts with little basins, not little, good-sized basins on top of them, but they roll and they move, so they hold water, and there's going to be 5 on each side of the courtyard of the temple that hold and move water. So 10 stands of bronze. Each stand was 4 cubits long, 4 cubits wide, and 3 cubits high. So about 6 by 6 by 4.5. This was the construction of the stands. They had borders. The borders were within the frames. On the borders that were set on the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. On the frames, both above and below the lions and oxen, there were wreaths of beveled work. Each stand had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze. At the 4 corners were supports for a basin. The supports were cast with wreaths at the side of each. Its opening was within the crown, whose height was 1 cubit. Its opening was round as a pedestal is made. It was 1.5 cubits wide. At its opening there were carvings. Its borders were 4-sided, not round. The 4 wheels were underneath the borders. The axles of the wheels were at the stands, and the height of a wheel was 1.5 cubits. The wheels were made like a chariot wheel. Their axles, their rims, their spokes, their hubs were all cast. There were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each stand. The supports were of one piece with the stands. On the top of the stand was a round band 0.5 cubit high. On the top of the stand, its stays and its borders were of one piece with it. On the surfaces of its stays and on its borders he carved cherubim, lions, and palm trees, where each had space, with wreaths all around. In this way he made the 10 stands. All of them were cast alike, with the same size and the same form. So 10 bronze stands, carts, because they have wheels, designed to hold water, and they are absolutely covered with wreaths and cherubims and all kinds of decorations. Verse 38, he made 10 basins of bronze. Each basin held 40 baths. Each basin measured 4 cubits. There was a basin for each of the 10 stands. He set 5 of the stands on the south side of the house, and 5 on the north side of the house. He set the sea on the southeast corner of the house. So you've got this massive container area bowl for water, and then you have 10 smaller stands with wheels, carts with basins on them to move the water. Verse 40, Hiram also made the pots, the shovels, and the basins. So Hiram finished all the work that he did for King Solomon on the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the tops of the pillars, the 2 lattice works to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 lattice works, 2 rows of pomegranates for each lattice work, to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the pillars, the 10 stands, the 10 basins on the stands, the 1 sea, and the 12 oxen underneath the sea. The pots, the shovels, and the basins, all of the vessels that Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the Lord, were of burnished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan the king cast them in clay ground between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all the vessels unweighed, because there were so many of them. The weight of the bronze was not determined. So clearly a lot of bronze. The inside of the temple is completely covered with gold, but everything else is also very costly and solid bronze. Verse 48, so Solomon made all the vessels that were in the house of the Lord, the golden altar, the golden table for the bread of the presence, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the south side and 5 on the north, in front of the inner sanctuary, the flowers, the lamps, the tongs of gold, the cups, snuffers, basins, dishes for incense, and fire pans of pure gold, the sockets for the doors of the innermost part of the house, the most holy place, and for the doors of the nave of the temple of gold. Thus all the work that King Solomon did on the house of the Lord was finished. Solomon brought in the things that his father David had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the vessels, and stored them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord. So the temple is a place that they bring many good things, and it is when they sacked it in AD 70, they took a lot. And actually, I think we're going to stop there. Originally, I was going to do 2 chapters tonight, but I think one very long chapter with a lot of bronze and silver and measurements and things. So the idea that they are trying to create a beautiful, special place to worship God, and that people could come to the mountain of God and worship God in this temple. And it was a very splendid temple. When they get to building the second temple, everybody is heartbroken because it's nothing like the original amazing temple of Solomon. So Solomon's temple was huge and beautiful. Took him a while to make it. And of course we have but imagine lots of carvings, lots of cherubim and wreaths and pomegranates and lattice work and all kinds of fancy, amazing things. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace, like, subscribe, and comment, and we will see you next time. Thanks for being here.